Welcome to Book Club for Movies. It is Thursday, March 1st. I'm Ryan Miller, and say hello to my colossal friend, Matt Amberg.
I wish I was your Nacho friend.
Like Nacho Libre?
I am. That's pretty good. I could deal with that.
Speaking of which, we are doing Colossal this week, and it was directed by Nacho Vigalondo. I assumed maybe I was mishearing his name most of the time, or it was spelled differently.
No, it's Nacho.
It's Nacho.
It's Nacho.
So that'll be fun. Thing number one on the list, I guess. This is Book Club for Movies. Every week, every Thursday, we sit here, we talk about some movies. One of those movies is going to be one we tell you about ahead of time that you can watch to participate in with us at this time. We will read your responses, your ideas, your suggestions, and we will have a conversation. So if that's something you're into, you can find us at podcast at zerohitpoints.com or on the Twitter, Facebook, internets. Your choice.
You do it. Figure it out yourself. We'll support you however you want to communicate with us.
Any which way.
Yes.
You're the best.
Right. So let's jump into this. 2016's Colossal.
So quickly.
We're going to do it right now. Written and directed by Nacho Vigalondo, who wrote and directed Time Crimes. Great kind of a time travel horror movie.
With crimes in it.
Yep, there's some crimes that time
Haven't
related.
seen it, just guessing.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Did a couple of sequences for ABCs of Death and VHS Viral, and then in 2016,
Really?
Colossal, starring the incomparable Anne Hathaway from you might recognize her, Princess Diaries, Batman.
I will be comparing her during this show, so
it was
I don't know
the
if
Dark.
that's
It wasn't the Dark Knight. It was
Dark Knight Rises. No,
Dark
she's
Knight Rises.
Catwoman.
She was Catwoman.
Yeah,
right. Jason Sudeikis, probably best remembered from SNL.
And anything else he's done that's been great? Last Man on Earth.
Last Man on Earth.
Love
it. And Tim Blake Nelson, one of the Coen brothers' great actors. Love him in anything but Oh Brother Where Art Thou. He's fantastic.
Most recently, I think I saw him in Leaves of Grass. Thoroughly enjoyable.
Always good, man. Tim Blake Nelson, killer.
That was his baby. In fact, he did everything on that thing with Ed Norton. So yeah.
Colossal's runtime here, 1 hour 48 minutes that go by fairly quickly. I think it's got a decent story.
I think we're getting into opinion zone here, but that's all right. Let's follow it then. What do you got? What do you think?
We are. Colossal's an interesting movie. Interesting performances. Just overall, this is a really well told tale. I think that I think a lot of people can identify with in aspects of it.
Oh yeah, I would hope so. If you can't, then you have some soul searching to do. Maybe
I think one of the main things that I take away from the movie is that it's not only a movie about guilt and kind of coming to grips with that, reconciling that guilt within yourself and with other people. Definitely more about reconciling yourself, but it's also heavily themed on rejection throughout the whole movie. Like everybody is rejected left and right, and it never changes. Like it doesn't really stop. There is rejection kind of universally up until you kind of get a resolution to the story and how that goes further.
And I don't even know that I would use the term reconciling or resolution. Like this movie kind of ends on a beautiful note that's not.
Right.
It doesn't tie a bow.
It does not tie a bow. There is. So let's get into this. We've got the story kicks off. Anne Hathaway is our main driver. She's our into the story. Sure. She's our protagonist. Mm-hmm. Movie starts off in Korea, and a little girl is playing in a park, and a monster appears behind her out of nowhere. That's it. 25 years later, we are immediately introduced to a drunk, hungover Anne Hathaway stumbling into her apartment to her boyfriend after being out all night. One of the things Dan Stevens, the boyfriend in this movie, he basically says to her, "The only time I get to see you is when you're hungover."
And she has a story about where she's been at that's obviously a lie.
And he calls her out on it.
It's obvious this has been going on for some time. Right. It's a strained relationship.
Yeah. And the moment that it turns out that he is finally fed up with it, he wants her to get some form of help, and he packs up her bags and says, "You need to leave by the time I'm home." And the following sequence is a really good it's a really good view into what she's been telling him and what she does, because he gives her the ultimatum, walks out the door. We're then treated to a bunch of friends that are watching the door to her apartment.
Right.
They all rush in.
His
apartment. True. Yeah. That she staying with him. Yeah. Right. Friends rush into the apartment, don't acknowledge the fact that she is sitting at a table devastated. They just go into the apartment and start drinking and watching it and hanging out. And
the movie's full of those little moments. Like they do a lot of those. And it's, I think this is my first Nacho, but I would hope one of his touches, like is Time Crimes full of kind of some similar, this is what can set somebody apart. I feel like
he does. Time Crimes is an incredibly different movie, but he does a good job of letting you into the world, letting you into the characters' lives. You do have an inkling of an idea of who they are and where they come from.
And done in a way that's not just,
it's not slapping you right in the face.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So from there, she ends up going home, and she runs into an old friend, Jason Sudeikis, and the rest of the movie is basically their relationship, both since childhood. They went to elementary school together, and there's a happening that is touched on at numerous points that is at the crux, a suppressed memory, I guess. We're given it in chunks until. Okay,
so interesting point here. That's actually kind of great that you brought this up, because I want to touch on this. So throughout the movie, there are these flashbacks that are clearly meant to be her as a child. It's clearly her as a young.
Which I didn't actually clue in on until maybe the third or fourth one, but
okay, fair enough.
I'm stupid.
No, I just make the assumption, and also on top of that, you keep in mind I have seen the movie in the past, so
gotcha.
But one of the things that we see throughout the movie is you get a flash, then you get a longer one, and they increase in time as the movie goes on. And as she is making changes, I felt like that was our vision into her understanding what's going on. As her brain is kind of becoming more clear. She goes back to this town, and immediately the first night she's there with Jason Sudeikis, gets tanked again, out all night, hammered all to hell, and she tries throughout the movie. She's making attempts to not drink, not make stupid decisions, and I feel like as she's sobering up, these visions are becoming clearer, which is giving us a deeper insight. And then when you get the full vision, that's her going, "Oh, I get it," and it's like there's a moment of clarity there. Not to say that she's no longer an alcoholic or no longer this or that. It's she gets the moment of clarity that lets her understand maybe why she's there.
I think they reference it maybe once. Like she says to him something happened and that's it. And they brush that off immediately or something like that, I think. Like it's not so huge that she's like trying to remember what happened all that time. It just kind of they bring up that flashback every now, and I am glad they did it like this. It's again one of those touches. It's very much like that scene where all the friends come in. So
yeah,
it's cool and impactful, and the rest of the movie is basically them coming to terms with their relationship since then and currently. She is trying to stop drinking, sort of. If I can hit the nail too much on the head, she turns into a monster when she drinks.
Yeah, no, right? That's 100%.
Before she knows that she turns into a monster when she drinks.
So spoiler alerts incoming. We've given you...
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, we've given you the base of the movie here. So let's get into this. One thing I want to mention is that she physically does not turn into the monster. That's not the thing here. The thing...
That's the subtext. A monster appears in Korea, and they do the math, which let's get right into that actually.
Sure.
The first act of this film is about 10 minutes too long for me. And part of that is it's a section where she kind of, the thrust of the movie is put on hold, and she basically does the math and figures out that, when she is in this particular spot at this particular time, a monster appears in South Korea, that it mimics her actions. Like she is that monster, right?
She's essentially puppeteering it without knowing.
Yes, but that time during the first act where she does that is dips for me. Like that was my first maybe complaint, was that they take a little bit too much time doing that actual math, which I don't know what the solution is, because I love the premise, this super weird kaiju film almost, or undertones to it, that they have to at some point figure out, or she has to at some point figure out that she is that monster. But the way they did it was for her to literally do the math. Like, she's got a thing on the, she does a whole breakdown. She's got maps everywhere. She's doing time. That didn't work for me. I wish they would have done that in a different way.
And I'll agree with you on that. Actually, it fits for the movie, and it works in the sense that it's a necessary thing, but it also does kind of come out of nowhere, and nothing like that ever happens again, where she shows that kind of, like, I don't want to say there's a lack of intelligence with her, but we never see anything like academic like that again, or ever brought up again.
No. Yeah. Well, the movie largely deals with her lack of initiative. Like, she is
true,
kind of that person.
Very
so she's
true.
Trying to fix that. She's broken in that way. But yeah, yeah.
It's
for a movie that is full of those little moments, the two we've talked about already, that stands out like a sore thumb. Like,
sure.
That's the complete opposite of what we talked about so far. Like, sitting down and doing the math.
And I said at the top of the show that I think the hour and 48 is a pretty good clip. That doesn't mean that it can't be trimmed in places, because there are a few sequences that just kind of drag on. That's one of them. There were a couple sequences in particular where, as Jason Sudeikis, as we're introduced more and more to him, we see that he is also, he has similar issues as she does. He has drinking problems. He also has rejection issues, significant rejection issues.
Right.
Irredeemable
ones.
And I would say more than anything, his story is one of rejection in particular, whereas hers, actually, rejection and jealousy. Hers is more rejection and guilt. And her story is about coping and learning to cope. His story is not about coping at all.
No,
his story is the burying all of it to get to just live his status quo until he finds out that maybe he can do something bigger, maybe he can do something different, because we find out that he also, if he is in that same spot at the same time with her, he also becomes a monster, except he's a giant robot.
Yeah.
Which then leads into his ego growing, because we are treated to a moment where, when they first realize it, they're at a park, and the park is near where all the kids go to school, and and across the street is a giant apartment complex. And they do this kind of, Vigalondo makes this choice where, when she wants him to stop being the robot, she slaps him, and everybody cheers. Everybody, like, the people are all cheering
because they're watching the news inside of the apartment complex.
Right.
Yeah,
And they're all seeing it live, not knowing. And the moment they start cheering, there's this shot on Sudeikis' face where he realizes now that he is bigger than life, but it's not him. And ultimately, I think at the end, she doesn't want this, because she doesn't want to cause pain, cause destruction, ruin things. He doesn't care if he causes pain, destruction, ruins things, because for him, it's important to be bigger than just a quote unquote bar owner living in a tiny little town.
He's a bully.
And he's a bully. And he becomes a bigger, like, we see him become a bigger bully throughout.
He's a bully that's given power. Like, we all know what happens. We can all see what happens when that happens
on a
right
daily
now,
basis,
specifically. And speaking of when he finds out he is the robot, that's the point where the movie picks back up for me. I think that's where the second act begins. It's about 10 minutes too late, but that is where I'm fully in on this thing. And you're right in that Sudeikis is, like, in my notes for the first half of the movie, I have Anne Hathaway is Anne Hathaway. Like, she's another, I use the term fluorescent light. Rachel McAdams is another one to me. I just see them acting instead of, the
right.
character a lot of the times. And I see the flicker. It's a fluorescent light. Sometimes the room's lit and it looks great. Sometimes I see the flicker. And with Anne Hathaway is one of those for me. So she's doing that. It doesn't ruin the movie for me. But then in my notes, I had Sudeikis. I was like, you know what? He's just 100% dependable. He doesn't seem to be playing anybody different yet, but he's Sudeikis, and we're enjoying him, and it's great. And then the rest of the movie happens,
and he changes.
It's amazing. Like, he is the thing. For me.
And to be honest, like, if you watch him as a character in that movie, not only is that character just scary, like he's scary because that is a very real person. Like, that is not, and the only extrapolation in this movie is that there are monsters, but these are very well written people, in my opinion. And while, maybe they go long in the tooth. I have had enough drunk situations in my life, and been around enough drunk people, and been, in bar situations where people, like, I've seen where he goes like, I'm super calm and I'm just drinking. Yeah, I'm hammered. I'm calm. And then flipping the switch, and then back to no, but everything's fine. And he does that. And there's a sequence towards the end, probably about 3/4 of the way through the movie, where he is full on blackmailing Anne Hathaway's character Gloria, saying, you're not allowed to leave this town. You can't quit the job working at my bar. You can't do anything. Otherwise, I'm going to go kill a whole bunch of people in Korea. I'm just going to
come back to this park every night.
Every night.
A lot of the movie is her, obviously on the surface, trying to deal with her issues, but also this is where the movie does a lot of its dancing. That's fabulous, but also trying to avoid being the monster and killing people. Right. So he begins to hold that over her, and as the movie ramps up, he becomes frightening. He becomes super scary.
I mean, he becomes an aggressive. Again, you're hitting it on the head, but he becomes an aggressive monster. And there is a sequence, like I said, about 3/4 of the way through, where the happy-go-lucky, calm Jason Sudeikis that we've seen in 1,000 other instances sits there and gets into it with Tim Blake Nelson, and he, like, when he turns that on from being calm to screaming, I thought you were leaving. Like, the face and that was all so well done that, again, like I said, I know that person. I've seen that person. And you kind of hope that if you've ever been drunk or blackout drunk, that you've not been that person, you know?
Or you hope when that person sobers up, you get your friend back or something like that, That doesn't happen here.
No, you actually get you do get a moment of her attempting to give an intervention with him. She goes where he's sobered up and he's at home. But that moment is such a moment of clarity for her and a moment of hollowness from him. Yeah. That you see, because he
is the act at that point.
It is.
Like, he is who he is when he's drunk.
And she sees that like when she, one of the things in the movie is that she goes and ends up working for him at his bar, and he had this giant bar that had like 2 sides and a country western side and all that stuff, and he put in money to renovate it, and then he ran out of money, and so he closed down one part of the bar. Okay, so that's
the country western part.
The country western part, and there's a moment that tips where or at least this was something I caught. He's talking to Gloria and Anne Hathaway's character, and he mentions that he was married once, and he had married a woman that moved, her and her kid moved in, and that she just got bored and then she had to leave.
Was it his kid?
No, it was her kid.
Okay.
They didn't have a kid together, and that was one of the things that so the combination of he had the money, but then it ran out. He couldn't complete the bar renovation. He had a wife that got quote unquote bored, left him.
And that's his assessment. Like,
right. Well, and
she probably left because he's a monster.
Well, that's exactly it. That she left because we see him grow. We get the introduction to him in the same way you're introduced to anybody who's like that. They're always going to be nice to your face right away.
Right.
It's time. Takes time, then they grow and they become more comfortable. And I would say that in this case, what we got out of that is that he was nice. They got married. They became comfortable. He became the monster.
Became comfortable. Yeah.
She left.
We should probably stop saying monster at some point. He becomes
he becomes an aggressive
bad
he becomes an
person.
abuser.
Yes.
He's an abuser.
He doesn't become the monster robot.
Period.
That's
He's an
another
abuser.
part.
That's
Yes.
it. He's an abuser. Period. He becomes the abuser, and then on top of that, my read onto it was that she divorced him, left him, and took the money, and that's why the bar is where it's at.
Sure.
And then we also find it throughout the movie, he's constantly giving Anne Hathaway things like, hey, I got this chair, I got these things. Then we find out that his whole house, he's a hoarder. He has never gotten rid of anything in his life, and he clearly has nothing going. And that's the thing. And then it goes back to the act where she hadn't seen that part yet. She hadn't seen his house. She had only seen the bar and the part where he stays in the bar in the back. So kind of feels like, oh yeah, no, he's got his stuff together. And then she realizes as he's becoming more aggressive, more abusive, then that moment of he is, and it literally is her walking in and going, oh, he's a mess.
Yeah. No, the houses are a beautiful illustration because as she's trying to rebuild her life, her house is rebuilding her house.
Her house totally empty.
She's adding furniture, all that stuff. We see his house. They're reflections of how they are inside. Like they flash a picture of his ex-wife with her face scratched out. Like that should have been, in retrospect, that was a huger red flag than it would have been. Because that is also the moment where he seems to want to redeem himself. But we do find out how hollow that is. But yeah, that the houses were another great touch.
Yeah. One of the other things that he does also as an abuser is he is constantly trying to get her to drink, because he knows that when they're drunk together, they have fun. They're monsters together. They're peas in a pod. And at one point, he actually says to her, and this again is that 3/4 of an hour in about, and it's that part with the Tim Blake Nelson thing, where he basically he looks at her and says, like, this is a quote, deep down, I know you want it. And he's offering her a beer.
Everybody's as broken as I am. This is how the world is.
Yep.
Like I'm not the aberration here. People trying to be better people are.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And again, I think that all goes back to that, again, with him, his portion of the movie, his themes are rejection and jealousy, whereas her themes are rejection and guilt. And I think that the overall intention here is coping, and how do you cope with that? And when you have rejection is a universal thing, and in their lives, rejection, he's rejected by his wife, he's rejected by his friends, he's rejected by the bank. He was rejected, and then she also rejected as a child, which we see in the flashback. So the flashback, which I guess
finally reveals all. Yeah, go for it.
So let's reveal the flashback. So the flashback that we see is her walking down the street, and she's got a project, a school project that's South Korea.
A little diorama.
Yeah, a diorama. Yeah. And a huge gust of wind blows it out of her hand over a fence into the spot where the park would eventually lay down. A little boy next to her, who we can later then surmise is probably Sudeikis' character, jumps over the fence and looks for it, and she follows him. And in the process, he finds it and then smashes it and destroys it. And while he's doing that, she's watching it, and she hasn't let him know she's there, and she's infuriated. And a very, very slow, weird bolt of lightning comes down and touches her on the top of the head and touches him on the top of the head. And throughout the movie, she mentions that she has this weird tic where she's constantly itching the top of her head. Right. And if you've seen the cover of the movie, the movie is her itching the top and the monster doing the same thing. And you find out that for whatever reason, that bolt of lightning is what gave life to the monster. And 25 years ago, when that little girl saw the monster for the first time, that was it. And then as we're finding this out, they both fall down. Their backpacks spill out.
Yeah,
and
they get struck with lightning. They fall down. Their backpacks come open.
And she has a monster.
We get the second scene that I would have liked to have done without.
The actually seeing the creatures.
Yeah, I didn't need that.
They're like they look like
she has a monster toy that looks like her monster. He has a robot toy that looks like what he turns into.
And they look like they were supposed to be handmade toys too. That was the other thing. They didn't look like they were supposed to be.
Well, that's fine. Them being licensed toys would have been worse.
No. What I mean is I mean that I think that's that was the more the purpose of them being shown is that we built these. But
actually, now that I think about it, shoot, you want that dude to like turn into a true monster, yeah, you have like a Transformers, like a current Transformers toy fall out of that.
Oh, see, yeah.
And then he just turns into
and maybe that's why he's
he's
a robot in general. That's actually really good because
why he's a monster.
Well, and on top of that,
irredeemably so.
Yeah, and on top of that, he is, robotic.
No, but seeing the actual toys come out, I didn't need that. I would have been fine with it remaining a mystery. I didn't need to. Or just the lightning being enough,
right, sure,
and because it's not the important thing, like we're coming now to the end where everything's getting laid bare, like Sudeikis is we know who he is now at this point. He's trapped Hathaway. I could use their character names, but you're lucky I'm not calling them by the name of movies they've been in the past. I should be calling her Catwoman and him probably still Sudeikis.
Jason Sudeikis, yeah. Did Payback run away?
Right, exactly. So it's getting to the point where she's trapped and she has to confront her abuser. Well, actually, she did that, but he beat her physically, literally. So we know that he's the monster through and through. And she finally gets the idea to combat this threat of his to attack the city, to attack South Korea every night until she comes there and does what he wants her to do. She goes to South Korea. But in that process, receives her last call from her ex-boyfriend and kind of stands up to him finally, like wraps that up because that's been kind of a thing coming back and forth. Speaking of which, I guess before we move on from that, the way that this toys with romance is pretty beautiful too.
Really great because the boyfriend that you kind of feel at the beginning, maybe just the end to the movie, like, oh, this is how she gets there. He does make he has a through line, and the through line is again, it's something that I know Beth, when she saw it, she was like, oh, I can absolutely identify with her in that spot. That end.
I thought you were gonna say with her boyfriend. I'm like,
dude,
no.
With her response to the see. So one of the other things is that is it becomes a kind of a question mark about was the boyfriend that she was with, was he abusive? Probably not the same way. I think it was more of a controlling situation.
Exactly.
It was
an
abusive,
not definitely not the same way, but yeah, he was a self-righteous douchebag.
Totally. And he feels that she owes him information and reasons for stuff. And at the end of the movie, that was one of those moments, I think, that I hope for you, there was maybe that fluorescent flicker when she's on that phone right there and she kind of goes, what? I don't owe you anything.
Yeah, no, it's the flicker is always there. But yes, the way it toys with romance too, because there's that dude who eventually does make overtures and kind of say, he comes back to find her and is like, hey, tries to reconcile or at least admit that he loves her in some respect, truly, instead of,
which I don't think I don't think up until that point he says that to her in the movie.
No.
He doesn't mention love until he is so bothered by the fact that she hasn't come back from where she is. He goes out of his way to find her.
And it's after the confrontation with Jason Sudeikis, like that great scene in the bar where he sets off a firework that destroys the place. Just chaotic, man.
That was a great scene.
Character Sudeikis is so good. But there's also this halfway done relationship with a kid in there. He's a yokel. Innocent,
he's a yokel.
I guess, yeah.
He's a young yokel that follows along with anything Jason Sudeikis wants to do.
Yeah, and when Anne Hathaway gets drunk, she does the thing that she hates, or supposedly, when she's not drunk, where she flirts with him and she knows she can get him and she gets him. So there's that too. There's all these kind of romances mixing, and then that combined with the fact that you kind of expect the romance main one to be between Sudeikis and Hathaway.
Yeah.
It never goes that far. Like, they don't ever even kiss or anything. But
I don't think they even. I honestly never felt like that was the intention either.
No, they toy with it though, man, because they toy with his jealousy for her.
The jealousy, and that's where the jealousy for her comes up. But it's never he never overtly is going after her, and
they don't take it that far.
And I think that's part of that's a thing that he has where he already knows he's going to be rejected. Why bother? And then more rejection for him when he never goes for it, he never asks, he never makes the attempt, and then his friend does.
Right.
So he and then he gets that even more, the anger, the rejection, all that.
Well, because he doesn't
jealousy.
That character might think he wants to have Anne Hathaway or be in a romance. He doesn't. He just wants to own her, or he wants to be,
it's a possession
he's the
thing.
abuser. Yeah, exactly.
It's the possession situation, and that's what he wants. He wants to own. And that's,
and they do
like,
call
the
that
bar.
out specifically.
Yeah.
Like she has a line that says that, but so sorry to get back. So she's in South Korea. She correctly surmises that if she is there, her monster will appear in the town where they are, does that, and basically uses that to scare him into running out of the park, but then grabs him before he goes. And then they have that great final scene where she's basically holding, not because she is herself in South Korea, she can't see what the monster sees, but through the direction and the cuts, we see her holding him.
Well,
him up to her face, basically.
But we also know that she knows that she's got him because she can see the robot is reacting in the same way. So she basically walks up to where the robot is standing, and makes the scientific or the educational. But it's a
beautiful ending because it's this David Goliath thing, and the abuser then becomes this tiny little person. It's
well, and that's it, right?
Beautiful confrontation, and then he starts to cry. And this is almost the spot where, does he get redeemed? Do we get to see that, he's just been hurt in the past. He's not fully to blame, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't. He doubles down. He tells her to F off, and she throws him across the world. Like you see the robot go, you don't see his body flail off. You don't see a rag doll or anything. You just see her complete that action on her side in South Korea. And it's gorgeous. I love that ending, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like we said earlier, the movie has some really great dialogue. I think it's got really good characters. There are some sequences that probably could have been trimmed. It doesn't need to be an hour 45, whatever. It could have been. We probably could have nailed this in an hour 30.
Just in that first act. Honestly, that's my only complaint.
But man, everybody turns in a great performance, and it is a really, really it almost. I don't know about you. I almost felt stupid watching the movie at the end of it. I'm like, how has nobody else just done this movie? Like, how did this movie get? How does
It's such a nuts premise, though. To think about it, and then how they work it out.
But it's like the most obvious premise
too.
The most obvious premise being, how do I visually show this person is actually a monster? Like, what's the fantastic.
Sure. Well, and that's in the way he does it. He makes it seem like somebody should have done it forever ago, but it's so nuanced that you kind of, and like I said, they don't tie a bow. Like even after that great last scene, she goes into a bar and, she's obviously shaken up by what's happened because she knows what she just did to the guy. But it's a great scene because she talks to the bartender, says, "You want to hear a good story?" And there's a bit about that earlier on. And she says, "Yes. Can I get you a drink?" And she kind of goes, she's back in it, like, I'm trying not to drink, basically. Like, it's not over. Like, that was just a battle, in the war or something like that. It's
a really, really great and finishing touch, like the finishing
literally the
sequence.
Last shot. Yeah.
It was really great. I highly recommend the movie. I think it's good.
It's a movie about damaged people. Like, I love a good damaged person movie, and this is like
totally
one of the best.
Really good. So that was our book club for movies selection for this week. Check it out. Let it, if you guys watch it late, let us know what you think about it. We'll come back to it next week if you got stuff.
We will.
Next week's book club for movies selection comes to us from the incomparable Dick Wolf, wonderful writer, starring.
He is. I'm not joking.
Yeah,
Law & Order, one of my favorite TV shows of all time.
Great writer. Starring Brendan Fraser, Matt Damon, Chris O'Donnell, Ben Affleck. The movie is School Ties. Take a look, check it out, and let us know what you think about it. It's got some serious themes to it.
Family Ties, sorry.
It's thematically heavy and not as humorous as Colossal. So hey, all right. We got that done. When you're ready to hit us up with that information, hit us over at podcast@zero-hitpoints.com. You can actually tweet at us with at Book Club 4 Movies, the number 4. It's a real Twitter account.
Yeah, we did that. It exists. I forgot to mention it.
Tweet your information to Book Club number 4 Movies. Don't say a number, just the number 4. It's really complicated. The internet is a hard thing to work out. So,
but this show isn't over.
It's not over. We got the rest of the show to do.
We've got a few more things we like to talk about because we can't help ourselves. So, Matt, this is going to go a little bit with the rest of the show last week.
Okay.
We talked about Hulk, I did at least, and what that comic book movie has become and was and all that stuff. And not purposefully, but it had been on my list. I watched The Shadow this week.
What evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
I wasn't prepared for how much it figured into a lot of our Hulk conversation last week.
Also, there is going to be a very funny little, because you watched The Shadow, there's a reference to The Shadow in School Ties. So there you go.
No kidding. Really?
It's a really minor, stupid reference, but when you see it, you'll go, oh, that's funny.
All right. Hey, cool. I like that we're following a thread.
Yeah. The Shadow knows. So
the thread here being, my problems with the Hulk were largely that it was trying to justify itself as, comic book movies can do this too, whereas they have been and can, and look what they're doing now. Marvel movies succeed on being what they are, not what they aren't. It just gets stupider the more I say it, the different ways I say it. The Shadow is a textbook case of knowing what it is and working with that and within that to beautiful effect. That movie holds up 100% for me. It does dip in the middle. I don't think the middle is nearly as strong as the beginning or the end.
I really enjoy that movie. It's a double feature for me. I can't really watch The Shadow without then wanting to watch The Phantom immediately afterwards.
We'll get there.
Because
I did my due diligence this time.
Yeah, no. And here's the funny thing is because I already can tell how this is going to go. You and I are going to diverge on this one. I love The Shadow. It's fun. Penelope Ann Miller is always a solid addition to any cast.
Yes.
Alec Baldwin, that guy has had such a career, like such an interesting career from top to bottom. I mean, look at all the things
here,
that he's
I don't
done.
know if I have nearly the nice things to say without him, because to a person that can play both sides of the fence, Alec Baldwin is that dude.
This is I absolutely agree with you. I mean, the prototypical, you want the perfect example of that character, of that person is, 30 Rock, right? You get, that's exactly how I think I knew. But it was it's a
great culmination character there for Baldwin. Yeah.
The Jonathan Blade, who listener, friend of the show, maybe we can say that now. He specifically mentioned something that I had never considered and I thought really interesting, was that back during the Shadow days, man, Alec Baldwin would have been a killer Bruce Wayne. Really would have been a good Bruce Wayne.
So that was part of what I read too, is that The Shadow was actually a lot of just the straight up inspiration for Batman. Period.
Oh, sure.
Like The Shadow, it has a long and storied career in the comics, which I wanted to dig in more, especially as we get into The Phantom, which was the other movie I watched. But The Shadow is such a cohesive world, and still talking about the movie here, it's does the 50s or the 20s or whatever it is so well, and with such limited resource, because that thing is full of just matte paintings and
which
like the cheapest Hollywood tricks, but it looks great. It looks perfect.
Awesome.
It's pulpy as all get out, which people say. I think
I'm going to make a leap here. Is that part of the reason you are not as big of a fan? Because I'm again leaping about The Phantom because it doesn't have as many matte paintings.
That's way more practical. Yes, that's way more on location, it seems like. But no, that's not.
Okay.
I definitely think it doesn't look as good as The Shadow, but no, I actually think The Phantom looked better than I remembered it looking.
Sure.
I thought it looked, my memory, I've only seen it once before and it's been a long time. I thought it looked horrible. It doesn't. It looks pretty good.
I think it looks great.
My problems come elsewhere, but yeah, the Shadow, Baldwin's perfect. He carries that movie in the perfect way. The story moves. It's paced perfectly. It's just done really well in a way that I think people gloss over because it does.
Because it's The Shadow.
Yeah, it's you don't hear a lot of people speaking positively about that thing or with reverence or anything like that, but it knows what it is and it uses the right people to get there. Freaking Jonathan Winters and his quick role, so good. It's a good movie. I don't have any qualms about that. The Phantom, you've every time I mention The Shadow, I feel like The Phantom comes up.
Has to.
It has been on my list. I hadn't remembered it well, I'm glad I got to watch it again and find out why. But where the Shadow succeeds, and maybe a lot of this is the character. I feel like the source material for the Shadow is more compelling than it is for the Phantom.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't have enough experience with either, honestly, but I know they're both coming from somewhere. I mean, the Phantom begins, and funnily enough for me, with a thing that says, "For those who missed it." It's got a very radio serial feel to it, which I love. I love that part, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Phantom was all radio serial, whereas the Shadow moved well beyond that.
No, the Phantom had comics.
Yeah, okay. So I'm wrong, but the feel is that there's so much. It begins with that thing saying, "For those who missed it," and then it gives a quick little backstory. But then the movie just goes like that was enough. And it wasn't really. Like the Phantom, there's nothing extraordinary about him for so long. And even then it's tenuous at best for me. So while it looks cool, like I think his costume looks cool and I like Billy Zane, that little intro isn't enough. Like at the very beginning when we see the bad guys coming up and then the Phantom shows up and they're like blown away. They're like, "What the heck is that?" And I'm like, dude, that's a guy in a purple costume on a horse in broad daylight. Mm-hmm. Like that's not amazing in any respect. He's just riding a horse. I'm like, I mean, yeah, the Shadow has a better entrance, but they needed to do more with that. I don't know if I needed an origin story or what, but I feel like that they did that. They didn't do the origin story because they try to turn that into a mystery, because the one superpower they try to say he has is that he's immortal. And then it turns out it's just a father-son thing for generations. He's not even immortal.
No, that was one of the best draws to it. It was that he's the Phantom is the chosen protector of the island,
but he can't do anything special. He just ends up being he's in the jungle. So
and yet he's been keeping people away for centuries. He's clearly doing something right.
I guess maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I missed. I mean, I get the feeling after the fact that he's just in a constant battle with these pirates on this island. Like that's probably the thing that happens, because he goes to New York for a little bit, but he's not a thing in New York. Like it's just, so it basically turns, it just looks like he's sitting in a cave on an island for his whole life until something happens and then he rides out on a horse. I'm like, what were you doing?
No smoking in the Skull Cave. All right.
Okay, that's a good line.
No smoking in the Skull Cave.
That's a good line.
No, I get it. I like the Shadow is very different. The Shadow has powers, and it was a very different movie. It's a beautiful movie. I like the Shadow. I personally do, for whatever reason, I've always liked the Phantom more. And I
okay, I didn't know that. I thought we were just going to talk about whether or not the Phantom was good. You like the Phantom more.
The Ghost Who Walks. I always like the Phantom.
You like the Phantom movie more than the Shadow movie?
Yes, I do. I like them both. I think they're both really cool movies.
We can still be friends.
I always just like the Phantom more, which is funny though, because radio drama wise, I always like the Shadow more.
And I don't have the experience with that. So
and all of them are irrelevant because Dick Tracy was the best. So shut up about it.
Oh, all right. Okay, sure. That's where I'm going now. Okay.
And by the way, Dick Tracy, man, you want to talk about matte paintings? You want to talk about amazing look to that movie blows things away.
From what I remember, it plays to those strengths. So yeah,
totally.
Exactly.
No, totally. Dick Tracy is a legitimately great pulp flick, and I will seriously say I think that even a decade plus past that first release, I don't know that there was a movie at that time that beat it out costume wise. Like that movie visually was outstanding.
Well, that had the prosthetics too. I feel like I remember they had
prosthetics. All the colors were very bright because Dick Tracy was in bright yellow. So they were in like these maroon reds and dark blue, like these cobalt blues, and then there was all sorts of the cars were also bright colors, and the city was built, and it was like that was one that had sets, but it also had those insanely gorgeous matte paintings. And
see, that's what you got to double feature. You got to be like the Shadow is a great double feature to Dick Tracy. Maybe they're too similar.
Check out.
I don't know, but
if you haven't seen Dick Tracy in a while, I mean that movie again.
Yeah, I will. No, you're right. Thanks for reminding me. Actually,
and crazy cast. That cast is mind-blowingly good. You got Pacino in there. You've got William Forsythe.
Warren Beatty. No, like it was a Warren Beatty movie.
Beatty's
like obviously,
in there.
the clout was used to good effect.
Frickin' Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, which is maybe part of it. I mean, the Phantom doesn't have.
It's got Treat Williams
as much as I like. I don't know. Well, it's okay. In the Phantom, I don't want to belabor this. How do you get past? Like that story's not that strong. It does look great, but like that Catherine Zeta-Jones turns on a dime for no reason. It's never motivated or explained.
No, not at all.
Okay, so it's more of a. It
is what
bad,
it is.
But you like okay.
It's
okay.
pulp.
All right, it is pulpy. It is pulpy.
Much like
Shadow's better.
Much like Glenn's skull at the end of season 6 or whatever of Walking Dead. It was pulpy.
Oh boy, is that all right? That's all I got. Is that yours? You got Walking Dead this week or
no? I don't. I'm not. I haven't watched anything this season.
Oh, okay.
No, I did watch a movie this week. I chose to. We started watching Altered Carbon recently. And
okay.
And I really the show's pretty cool. We both really like futuristic stuff.
It's got RoboCop in it.
It does have RoboCop in it, who's significantly not RoboCop in this. Like he's actually kind of good. Again, I think that guy is just making poor decisions in every life choice.
Did you? Well, Suicide Squad. Let's not. Have you seen the new RoboCop?
Again,
yet?
never gonna see it.
Okay, I thought you made a stand on that. Way better than it had any right to be.
No,
and good. But
disagree.
Yes. Okay.
I will maintain my ignorance. Thank you very much.
RoboCop.
So we were watching. We're just cyberpunky stuff and futuristic stuff has been floating, and then Duncan Jones released Mute on Netflix, and said, okay, we're gonna watch that. The movie is called Mute, as in
right. Yeah, as in what I should do while you talk about. Got it. Let's go for it.
I wasn't actually trying to intend that, but sure. So Mute, movie written and directed by Duncan Jones, who wrote Moon and Warcraft.
Oh, okay. Let me put this one on the list too. Wait, Warcraft?
Let's go ahead and hold off for a moment.
Oh, no. It's more Warcraft than Moon?
Okay, so this movie, it stars Alexander Skarsgård, Paul Rudd, and Justin Theroux. Those are your three.
I can't put this on the list?
Alexander Skarsgård plays a bartender who is mute.
He's looking around. Okay. The wind up.
Yeah.
And the pitch.
He is a bartender who's mute. It's a future. I don't even know if they give you a year on that. I don't think there was a year given. It was just
near future sci-fi.
No, this is more cyberpunky, a little more futury. It's pre-Blade Runner ish. Let's go with that.
Okay. All right.
His partner, his confidant, his girlfriend, his lover, whatever, goes missing, and so it becomes a story about him trying to go from point A to point B. Where is she? Where'd she go? This movie has a lot of things going for it, and it has a lot of things not so much. One of the issues that I majorly have with this movie is it's very, very... It's like two different movies.
A good one and a bad one?
No. I mean, this is not a bad movie. It's just very mediocre. Like, it's... Like Warcraft was a very mediocre movie. It's not a bad movie. If you don't like Warcraft, it's probably a bad movie. It leans more towards not great. But I think
it's true. It's
not the worst.
Yeah,
it's competent.
Okay.
Moon. Oh man, Moon is incredible, right?
Fantastic.
So this
I'm
movie.
Watch that again now. Actually, let's put that on.
This movie ties in with Moon. So this is pulling a Cloverfield thing with us, where there is
like literally ties into the universe of
literally there is a moment where like early on in the movie where Alexander Skarsgård's at a bar, he looks up at a TV and Sam Bell, played by what's his name from Rockwell, is on the TV. So the character from Moon, Sam Bell, and there's a whole bunch of clones of him in the jury room or something. So like it's a really brief thing, but Duncan Jones has said that there are 3 movies he's written that are all connected.
I kind of love that actually.
No, like, that sequence again, but it's like 30 seconds. Awesome, really cool.
It doesn't fit with Moon at all technically, but I kind of
it does because it's the character, and so they're basically
it does, but
saying
it doesn't like that scene would not belong in that movie.
No, gotcha. Not at all. No. The worlds are connected in that respect.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry.
So no. Yeah. So you've got that, but this ultimately comes down to this. It's a murder mystery story, without being a murder mystery story. Like he's not a detective. He's just a mute bartender that works at a bar that goes off the handle when somebody threatens his girlfriend, tries to beat the crap out of them. You find out the guys that he wants to fight at the bar that are threatening his girlfriend or like aggressively coming onto her.
Okay.
Are guys that are also working with Paul Rudd's character, who are completely separate. They have nothing to do. The bartender, Skarsgård and Rudd have nothing to do with each other at this point. Okay. This is how they get connected. Skarsgård picks a fight with these guys. Paul Rudd's character needs them because Paul Rudd is a surgeon with Justin Theroux. Justin Theroux and Paul Rudd are these like underground surgeons. He clearly used to be in the military, and throughout the movie, there's all these notes about if you find anybody who has gone AWOL, alert us now, and blah, blah, blah. So he's working with the guys to get his papers to leave the city. That's all he wants to do.
I don't know how you make this movie mediocre at this point.
Trust me, when you start getting into it, you'll see how it's very mediocre.
Mediocre. Right.
So he and Justin Theroux are friends that work together for a kind of a gangster. They're just underground guys that dude gets shot. You don't take him to the doctor, the hospital, because then they ask questions. You take him to these guys.
Sure.
So that's what they do.
They're the David Duchovnys of playing God.
Now, the one great thing in this movie is Paul Rudd and Justin Theroux. Paul Rudd, the moment he walked on screen, I was like, oh, hello, you're Elliot Gould from MASH. Because he looks like him. He talks like he's got that same wry style.
That would work too.
100%. When you see this movie, all I thought was if they ever remake MASH, he's Trapper John.
Shoot.
That's that. And when you see it, again, he's got the mustache. He looks almost exactly like Elliot Gould did in the MASH movie. And apparently he and Justin Theroux did kind of try to channel some of the Elliot Gould and the Donald Sutherland from MASH.
If they didn't think about that, they would.
And they do. Like
huge failures.
Justin Theroux is funny because if you're familiar with him, this is a movie where it took me at least 5 or 6 scenes going, oh, that's Justin Theroux. Like,
what's he from? I do not recognize the name right off. I should.
He's on a TV show.
Actually, I recognize the name. I can't put a face to it.
Justin Theroux, he was, so you might best remember him actually from Parks and Rec. He was in an early Parks and Rec season where he played a guy named Justin that was like really good at his job, and Tom loved him, and he and Leslie were dating for a while, and then he gets her to get John Larroquette and her mom back together for like one episode, and it doesn't work out.
Huh.
Okay, maybe not.
Okay.
He was John Hancock in the John Adams movie with her TV show. He was in The Leftovers. That's the big TV show that he's in.
Okay. Well.
He was in Girl on Train.
Criminally thin on my Justin Theroux.
He was in Miami Vice.
Yeah. Wait, the movie or the TV show?
That's the movie, I think.
Oh.
I've never seen it.
Thought it was going to be like a toddler detective on the 80s.
He's an infant detective, baby detective.
Okay. So now we're talking. So Justin, man, we've just made like 2 better movies than this actual movie.
Tom, I'm telling you. So Justin Theroux and Paul Rudd are pretty strong in the movie. They're back and forth, and then like Paul Rudd finding out who Alexander Skarsgård is, or recognizing, okay, he's looking for something, he's around, and they kind of start crossing paths until the finale comes around where you do get them, everybody comes together, and there's a moment.
Sounds mediocre.
One of the things I gotta say, like, this is like, it's actually pissed me off while I'm watching the movie. I even looked at Beth. I was like, are you kidding me? That's really how they're just gonna let this go. Justin Theroux's character is a pedophile.
All right.
They never show him touching kids, but there's 2 sequences where they show him like taking pictures of young girls, and then Paul Rudd's character calls him out on it and says, like, he threatens him and says, you're never doing this again, ever. You're never going to do this again, because Paul Rudd also has a daughter. You're never doing it again. And they leave it at that. They walk away.
What?
Okay, we're friends. Fine.
What? Really? Well, why is that in there? That seems like something got cut.
It seems like something, I don't know. It's a very, very aggravating sequence because...
Especially that. What are you solving with that?
If you're going to build something with it, fine. Do something with it. They never do anything with it.
How do you leave that hanging? How do you leave pedophilia hanging?
And there's like... I don't want to give the end of the movie away because the characters do, like I said, they all coalesce into one moment or one sequence that, again, just like it sucks
the wind out of your sails.
It did. It like that. The pederast thing was one thing. I went, okay. And then there's the, I'm not good. And then there's Paul Rudd, whatever. Don't do it anymore. That's like,
dude, I hate that feeling. I got that the last time I remember getting that. This is not this is my fault. Was the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie where they build to like all this stuff and they kind of like have reasons for things, and then the way they solve that climax is just the stupidest runaround. Like, oh, this is also a part of this, and you're like, what? I'm like, it's because it's like you spent all that time. And then you're like, that's like they could have done something else and almost salvaged the movie. Like, is that what we're talking about here?
So definitely. So this is really funny because there's another movie that is totally different genre, completely unrelated. And yet I feel did this whole thing better without the sci-fi. It becomes more of a ghost story. And it was Stir of Echoes. It's a different, there's differences to it, significant different, but there is
structurally speaking,
there's a structural point where I think they both are very similar in respect to the murder mystery aspect, and it does it better then. And the bummer is like, you can see some really good ideas, some really good performances, but it just, that whole third act just sucks the wind out of everything. And then on top of that, the first, or that second, like the transition to the, actually I would say this is almost a 4-act movie because there's the transition between the first and second acts being Skarsgård, the second, and then the second, like the last half of the second, and then the third act are Paul Rudd, with the final act being more Skarsgård and then everybody else coming back in and it all circling together. Huh. And it was such a bummer. Both Beth and I kind of went, well, yeah. All right. It
can't all be winners here on Book Club for Movies.
If you loved Moon, I could say give it a shot.
But if you loved Moon, give Moon a shot, I think is what you just said.
Yeah, give Moon a shot. If you loved Moon,
go watch Moon again.
Go into mute with tempered expectations.
They can all be winners here on Book Club for Movies because
we're winners.
Yeah. You're winners. You're part of this too. Next week we're going to do School Ties, like we mentioned. So be a winner. Get on board with that. It's got Brendan Fraser in it. It's not Encino Man, but hey, what is?
Yeah. Guess what, guys? It's time to join the club, the book club for movies.
So official. Podcast at zerohitpoints.com, Twitter, Facebook. It's all there for you to use.
Book Club 4 with the number 4 movies
when you
at
do.
Twitter.
That's correct.
On Twitter.
That is correct. Yeah.
Book Club 4 with the word 4, like FOR, not FOUR.
No, it's just the letter. Just Google it. It won't come up because it's brand new and it hasn't got a lot of hits yet. But maybe by Googling it, you can SEO it for us.
In fact,
that's how it works, right?
In fact, since we have few hits, maybe you can give us more hits so that we can get to 0 hit points.
Oh, beautiful. Good night. Forever.
Have a little song. Won't take long. Sing it right. Once or twice. Oh, lie to me, didn't I shake sugary? Everything I got is done in part. Everything I got is